Okay. So on this particular one, I don't know if you guys know this, your parents might have told you, that when the popular streaming service Netflix was founded in 1997, there were mail-order DVD subscription service. So you would choose the DVDs you wanted to watch, and they would mail them to your house, and then you would watch them and then mail them back to Netflix. There was no streaming back then, so but in 2007, it turned into a streaming service. And in 2007, Netflix launched the new streaming service with 7.32 million subscribers. By 2015, when T is 8, Netflix had grown to 70.83 million subscribers. The number of Netflix subscribers can be modeled by this function N, where N of T is equal to A times B raised to the T, where N of T is the number of subscribers in millions for year T, and T is the number of years since the initial streaming service launch in 2007. All right, so A says, A1 is the easiest point to get. Use the given data to write two equations that can be used to find values for constants A and B in the expression N of T. So what we're going to do is take that when T is 0, there's 7.32 million subscribers, and put that into the function. So we're going to put in 7.32 for N, and we're going to put in 0 for T. So let's do that on the sheet. Bless you. You're welcome. So when you do this, A and B have to be A and B. And then everything else is a value is put in for them. All right, and then the other part has that when T is 8, there's 70.83 million. So we're going to put 70.83 in for N, and we are going to put 8 in for T. Right? Don't try to be fancy and put something like N of 0 or N of 8. You won't get a point for that. So just straight use the number. Use the number. That's the value of the number of users. Don't use the variable N. The only two letters you should have are A and B. You just won't get the point if you do it that way. Okay. All right, and then the next question says to find the values for A and B. So go back over to your FRQ2 notes. All right, sometimes you can use the regression feature in your calculator to find A and B. Fingers crossed, that's what they give you. If you can't, it's not that difficult to do by hand, but obviously it's more difficult than just typing it in the calculator. So these are the situations where the calculator will just do all the work for you. And so the very first one is what we have in this case, and that's going to be, I want to say it's choice 0, which is going to look like X regress, X reg. All right, if it happen to be a quadratic, that's going to be choice 5, which is quad reg. The next one would be choice 6 on your list of regression functions, which is cubic reg. And then the next one has some typos. I never put in the exponents for 4 and 3, so put those in for me, please. And those are going to be quartic, but it's just quart reg. All right, and then the last one is choice 9, which is LN reg. Now the one they put on the AP test last year was one like this. So it was one that you had to do by hand, It wasn't super difficult to do, but it was, like I said, a little bit more difficult than just putting it into the calculator. But on this one with Netflix, this is this first one. So we're just going to put this data into the calculator. Okay, do you guys remember where to go? Okay, you're going to go to Stat. If you don't have a calculator, grab one, it's fine. And then you're going to go to Edit. Right, and then you're going to put the times in list 1, and you're going to put the subscribers in list 2. All right, and then once you get that entered, you're going to hit Stat, and then you're going to go over to Calc, and then this is where those numbers I was talking about. So 5 was quadreg, 6 cubic, quartic, and then natural log, and then choice 0 is what we want in this case. Bless you. And then I personally would go ahead and store this in for Y1 because you're going to have to answer a question about it, and it helps if you know what the graph looks like. So we're going to store this in for Y1, and then we're going to calculate it. And then all you have to do is write down accurate to 3 decimal places what A is and what B is. So in this case, that's also a pretty easy point to get, if you just remember the keystrokes. Right? The next 2 questions also are not terrible. If you average 4 points, earning 4 points on each FRQ, that is really amazing, actually. All right, let me move this calculator out. All right, now we're down to B. So B1 says to use the given data to find the average rate of change in the number of Netflix subscribers in millions of people per year from T equals 0 to T equals 8 years. We're going to express our answer as a decimal approximation, and you do have to show your computations. I know you can do it in your calculator. You have to write it down, or you do not get the points. So this question is always going to be the same. They just change like the noun and the times, depending on the situation. So we have found average rate of changes so many times. I hope you remember it forever. But what are we going to subtract on the numerator? Are we going to subtract the times? Or are we going to subtract the subscribers? Subscribers. So I'm going to start with the largest number of subscribers. And then I have to follow suit with the denominator. So since I use the number of subscribers in year 8, I do have to do 8 minus 0. Now, if you type it in like that, it's possible you would get a fraction, but we 100% have to give a decimal answer, and it has to be accurate to 3 decimal places. You can go more if you want to. It's perfectly fine to do more than 3, but you have to do 3. Great, and then part B2 will be one of 2 different things. So this one says to use the average rate of change found in part 1 to estimate the number of subscribers at time t equals 6 years and show the computations that lead to the answer. So that is this one here. All right? And so what we're going to do is find the secant line. Now we did this a ton, but it's been a while, where you use M is the average rate of change we just found, and then this is going to be a point, one of your data points, either one, it doesn't matter. So you find the secant line, and then in this case we're going to plug 6 in for t when we're done. Okay, so I'm going to say that y of t is approximately, and then you get to pick. Do you want to use the point 0, 7.32, or do you want to use 8 and 70.83? Okay, using the one with 0 is a good idea. If 0 was one of your points you used to find the average rate of change, definitely it's going to be easier to do that. So we put the 7.32 in for the y1. If we're looking at our secant line formula, we're going to put our average rate of change in for M. It's probably a good idea to go to a lot of decimal places here. Don't round too much. All right, and then t, and then in this case it's going to be minus 0. All right, and then this one is asking us to use this to estimate 6 years. So we'll go back and put 6 in for t. All right, and then we can just let our calculator do the work here. Now, if you found the average rate of change, you can go back and pull it up instead of having to retype it if you wanted to. I just hadn't done it. Okay, so that means that there are going to be 54.953 million subscribers. All right, and then part 3 of the changes from question to question. So this one says to let a sub t represent the estimate of the number of Netflix users in millions using the average rate of change found in I. A sub 6 found in 2, it can be, this is a typo, it should say it can be shown that a sub 6 is greater than n of 6. Explain why, in general, a sub t is greater than n of t for all of t, where t is between 0 and 8. And your explanation should use reference to the graph of n. So that is the second one. Well, either way, on part 3, you need to use the concavity. If you need to mention concavity on B part 3. So this question, could ask you to compare the average rate of change found in 1 to the average rate of change found somewhere else. That's not what this one did, but it could. And so if the function is concave up, are those average rates of change increasing or decreasing? Increasing. So you would say that somewhere in the problem when you give your explanation. If the function is concave down, the average rate of change is decreasing. All right, so sometimes that's what you need to talk about. But this one is more like the second part. So it could ask you to compare the estimate you just found to estimates from the predicted model. So what we're going to do first is draw the model with the correct concavity. Then we're going to draw the secant line, labeling the points it goes through on the model. And then we're going to determine which is greater based on your graph. Which one is on top, basically, is what you do. All right, do you guys know what this looks like? If it's exponential, A is positive, and b is greater than 1. Do you guys know what that looks like? Yeah, some of you do because you just drew it with your finger. That's good. If you don't, it's okay. We can look at the graph. Now, right now, I don't know what my window is. It's from something I did for another question. We just see a tiny, tiny portion of it. But I do know the smallest number of Netflix users was 7.3 million. And then we're going all the way to 70.83 million. So I'm going to just real quick, let's go from 0 to 10. And we can go from 0 to 100 million. All right, there it is. So you guys were right. Those of you that drew with your finger, you were right. So let's take a second and draw that. That is N of t. All right, we're also going to draw the secant line. Now you could graph your secant line too if you wanted to, but this is going to be t equals 0. And we'll say this is going to be t equals 8. The secant line is a straight line through those points, and that's a sub t. So getting that graph right, you're on your way to answering this question beautifully. And when someone is reading your test and trying to figure out if you know what you're talking about, having that drawn really helps you show that you do know what you're talking about. Even if your words get a little weird because you forget exactly how you're supposed to say it, that graph helps a lot. Okay, so now I'm going to go back to the words of the problem. To that second to last sentence. So we're going to explain why, in general, a sub t is greater than n of t for all t where 0 is less than t is less than 8. That's why you're trying to prove you know why that's true. That's talking about this section of the graph right here and nothing else, just this little section right here, when t is between 0 and 8. So you need to tell them you know what a of t is, or a sub t is the secant line. Through t equals 0 and t equals 8. So drawing it perfectly also kind of tells them you know what you're doing, but saying it helps too. And then we need to say about if n of t, the model, is concave up or down. What do you think? Concave up. All right, and then so a sub t will fall above, bless you, n of t for all 0 is less than t is less than 8. Now if it was beyond 8, then a of t is going to be less because it's going to be below it, and that's all due to the concavity of the graph. All right, are you guys okay with that? Do you remember doing that? I know, we did it so much. She got so tired of it. I have a kid in my second period that hates writing so much. He hates this problem a lot. All right, let's look at C. Now C, I don't know what to tell you. It's different from, like, it could be anything in the world at this point. It probably will have something to do with restrictions or an error in an error between like the predicted and the actual values. It's just hard. So anyway, this one's not too terrible. It says that for which t value, t equals 6 or t equals 19 years, should we have more confidence in when using the model in? And then give a reason. So what do you guys think? 6 or 19? Why? Falls in between. You guys are great. All right. That's what we're going to write. So we're going to say, maybe they'll give us someone like this year. So we should have more confidence spell confidence, right? In t equals 6 because t equals 6 falls within the interval of data while t equals 19 falls outside, or something like that. Now I graded 3 different versions of 2, and on C they never really wanted you to plug something in and find like a number. They just wanted you to explain. So we'll see that on the next one. You could at some point plug in, but they don't really, I don't think they really want you to do it the other way. Okay, so we are going to do one more. I know I'm working y'all to death, and it'll be fine. So we're also going to do T, if I can find it, there it is, plus 2. All right, so this one is about a rumor. So after Mr. Passwater missed a day of school, a rumor began to spread that he had won the Powerball lottery and moved to Japan. Initially, 7 students knew about the rumor. They were the ones that started it. After 2 hours, which is t equals 2, a total of 15 students had heard the rumor. After 6 hours, 67 students had heard the rumor. The number of students that have heard the rumor can be modeled by this piecewise function. And I think this would be the most difficult one that you would see, a piecewise function probably, where R of t is the number of students that have heard the rumor at time t since t hours since the rumor first began. Okay, so we're going to use the given data to write 2 equations that can be used to find the constants a and b for the expression r. All right, so our 2 pieces of information are 2 and 15. And 6 and 67. All right, and so with a piecewise function, you have to know which piece to use. And so for t equals 2, which piece do you think we're going to use? The top. Yes, sir. All right, so we're going to put in 15 equals, all right, and then this one is 7 times a to the t divided by 2, so in this case it's 2 divided by 2. All right, and then figuring out 6 is actually a little more challenging. Do you guys know which one to use for 6? They both have a 6. The bottom one, because this is the one you use when t equals 6. So we're going to put 6 in for this t, and what was it? 67 in for r. Now don't forget, A and B need to be the only variables that you write on this part. If you find yourself writing R or a T, you are wrong. You only have the letters A and B. Okay, and then 2 says that we are going to find the values of A and B. So did you guys see any piecewise function regressions? There are no piecewise function regressions, so we're definitely going to have to do this by hand. It's very doable. You're going to be fine. So let's start with the 15 equals 7a, and then 2 divided by 2 is just 1. And so to solve this, we would just divide by 7. You don't have to show that work. And then give your answer as a decimal, accurate to 3 places. All right, and then the other one we're going to use to find B. Now sometimes when you do this, you have to plug in the A to find the B, and this one they didn't write it that way, so it's fine. All right, so I'll start off by adding the 213.29 to 67. And then we'll divide by the natural log of 6. Right. And then I know you guys have been practicing multiple choice questions, but I'm not sure if you remember natural log. I don't know, it's easy. So when you need to do the natural log of 6, natural log is just beside 4. All right, so that is going to make B equal to 156.433. On that, in this case, it could be 0.432 also. That's perfectly correct. All right, y'all good? That's why they give you so much space on that, because it's possible you would have to use that space to work out the question, but they're perfectly fine with you using the regression if you can, and just write A and B there. All right, this time, B1 is always the same. We're going to do an average rate of change, and this time it is between T equals 2 and T equals 6 hours. So we're just going to do our fraction. We are going to subtract the number of students that have heard the rumor in the numerator. And we are going to subtract the times they heard it in the denominator. And this ends up coming out equal to 13. And then the units, I don't think you have to, but I like to write the units here. It tells you in the problem what the units are, but it also will help you if you have to interpret it. I think it helps you think about it in the right way. All right, and then this one is one that asks you to interpret the meaning of that average rate of change in the context of the problem. So if you look over at your part B2. If you're asked to interpret the meaning of your answer for the average rate of change in the context, this is a good way to write it. In calculus, we call it the nut method, where you have a noun, which is what you would put right here, and then a unit, and then a time. So if you include the noun, the unit, and the time, you're probably going to get it right. All right, so this is an average rate of change. So we're going to start off with the words on average. And then we're going to give our noun, or what this problem is all about. What is this problem about? The students. So the number of students who have heard the rumor All right, would you guys say that the number of students is increasing or decreasing? It should be increasing. So if your average rate of change is positive, this is increasing. If negative, it's decreasing. So increasing by 13 students per hour. And then we need to give the time span. So from T equals 2 to T equals 6 hours. Okay. And then for part 3, we're going to consider the average rates of change of R from t equals 0 to t equals p, where that p value is always between 0 and 2. So it's like at the very beginning of your function. Are these average rates of change less than or greater than the average rate of change that we just found from t equals 2 to 6? And we have to explain our reason. We have to include a reference to the graph and its relationship to the average rate of change. So this graph starts off exponential. So it starts off exponential where this is a positive and that is greater than 1. So it's going to look like the graph that we just did, how it started. So it starts off exponential. And then when it gets to, let me try that again. Starts off exponential. And then when it gets to t equals 6, it changes to logarithmic. And in this case, let me look at it real quick. So the first number is negative, but that doesn't really affect the shape. B is positive, and it's the natural log of 6. So logarithmic in this case is going to look like that. So it looks like a whole bunch of people heard the rumor, and then it kind of slowed down because I guess more people knew. All right, now what we found when we did the average rate of change was the average rate of change from 2 to 6, which is the slope of this line right here. And what we're comparing it to is the average rate of changes found from 0 to 2. So would you say that the average rate of change found here, is that going to be less than or greater than this average rate of change? Less than. And the reason can't be like, oh, it looks like it's less steep. The reason has to do all about concavity. All right, so let's go ahead. You were right. It is going to be less than. So let's start off and write it, and let's see if we can get the wording correct, the wording that they want you to say. So I'm going to quote the problem, starting at the beginning where it says consider. So I'm going to start after consider and say that the average rates of change of R from t equals 0 to t equals p, where 0 is less than p is less than 2 weeks, are, and you guys all said less than the average rate of change from t equals 2 to t equals 6. Because, now I'm telling you, you have to give concavity. So the reason has to do with that. So because, is it R? Yeah, R is concave up from 0 to 6. Now, most of the time, concavity doesn't change on these problems, but in this case, it does. So try to remember if it's something like this, that you have to be specific about where the concave, or where the function is concave up. Therefore, the rate of change is, what do y'all think? Concave up? Increasing. Now, if you continue writing in the next space, it's okay. The way they had us grade it, that if, well, actually the next space is part C. So you can write the answer to part B in any of these sections. It's good to follow the directions, but if for some reason you wrote it in the wrong place, they would still grade it, even as long as it's written in the correct part. And if you go outside the lines, it's not like they won't grade anything outside the lines. They just don't know if it'll show up when they scan it. That's why they try to get you to stay inside the lines. All right, let's see if we can do this part C. So this one, the model R is valid for T is between 0 and 12 hours. Explain how the range values of the function R should be limited in the context of the problem.
As far as like the range or the outputs of T0 to T12?
Yes, perfect. So again, they don't necessarily want you to, find what the range is. They don't care about calculating on this one. They want you to explain. All right, so when I did this earlier, I didn't use the context of the problem. Okay, so let's say, let me make sure I do use the context of the problem this time. So the range values should be limited to the number of students found by the output of, and then what would the smallest output you would use? 0. To the output of, and then what would the largest be? 12. Now, like I said, they don't want you to find those outputs. We should know 0 would be 7, but we don't, it's okay. Don't waste your time doing that. Because if you do it and you do it wrong and you know what you were doing, then you might not get the point. All right, what questions do you guys have about FRQ2?